He wore the same navy blue uniform every day, sat behind the same desk for 8 hours, and never spoke unless someone spoke to him first. The bank customers barely noticed him. The tellers treated him like furniture, but when three armed men burst through those glass doors at 2:47 p.m., demanding everyone get on the ground, they made one critical mistake. They looked at his forearm and saw something that changed everything. Welcome to the Warriors Channel. Before we begin this story of silence, courage, and split-second decisions, tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who serve in silence. The First National Bank of Riverside sat on the corner of Main and 3rd Street, a modest building with marble columns and brass fixtures that had watched over the town for 40 years. Inside, the atmosphere was always the same: quiet conversations, the soft clicking of keyboards, and the gentle hum of air conditioning that made everything feel safe and predictable. Marcus Thompson had worked there for 3 years. Every morning, at 6:55 a.m., he'd park his old Ford pickup in the employee lot, walk through the back entrance, and take his position at the security desk near the front door. He was 52 years old, gray-haired, with hands that showed the wear of a life lived outdoors. His uniform was always pressed, his badge always polished, but his eyes held something the bank employees never quite understood. The morning of September 15th started like any other. Marcus arrived early, checked the overnight reports, and settled into his chair with a cup of black coffee. He watched the familiar faces stream in: Mrs. Patterson making her weekly deposit, young Jake from the hardware store cashing his paycheck, the usual parade of people who made Riverside feel like the kind of place where nothing bad ever happened. Sarah, the head teller, had worked there longer than Marcus. She was friendly enough, always said good morning, but she'd never asked about his life outside the bank. None of them had. To them he was just the quiet man who sat by the door, occasionally checked IDs, and made sure no one brought anything they shouldn't into the building. What they didn't know was that Marcus Thompson hadn't always been a security guard in a small-town bank. What they didn't know was that the slight limp he walked with came from shrapnel that had torn through his left leg in Kandahar. What they didn't know was that the way he positioned himself at that desk, with clear sight lines to every entrance and exit, wasn't a coincidence. And what they definitely didn't know was that the faded tattoo on his right forearm, usually hidden beneath his long-sleeved uniform shirt, told a story that would have kept them awake at night. At 2:45 p.m., Marcus was reviewing the afternoon shift report when he heard the rumble of a diesel engine outside. Not unusual. Delivery trucks came and went all day. But something made him look up. Maybe it was the way the engine shut off too quickly. Maybe it was the sound of multiple car doors slamming at once. Or maybe it was an instinct he'd developed in places where the wrong sound meant the difference between going home and being carried out. Through the tall windows, he saw 3 men approaching the front entrance. They moved wrong, too purposeful, too coordinated. The first one, tall and lean with a baseball cap pulled low, had his right hand in his jacket pocket. The second, stockier with a beard, kept glancing at the windows like he was counting people inside. The third, younger than the others, was checking his watch. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Not fear, but recognition. He'd seen this walk before, this kind of movement. Professional, planned, predatory. His hand moved to the silent alarm button under his desk, but he didn't press it yet. Not until he was certain. But his body was already responding to signals his conscious mind was still processing. His weight shifted forward in his chair. His muscles tensed in a way they hadn't in 3 years. And somewhere, deep in his memory, muscle memory older than his time at the bank began to wake up. The three men pushed through the front doors at exactly 2:47 p.m. The first one immediately pulled a sawed-off shotgun from under his jacket. The second drew a pistol. The third locked the front door behind them and flipped the sign to closed. "Everyone on the ground, now! This is a robbery." The man with the shotgun's voice echoed through the quiet lobby. Screams erupted from the customers. Mrs. Patterson dropped her purse. Jake from the hardware store stumbled backward into a chair. The tellers behind the counter froze, their hands automatically rising above their heads. Marcus remained seated. The robber with the pistol swept his weapon across the room, his eyes wild with adrenaline. "I said everyone on the ground. That means you too, security man." That's when Marcus slowly raised his hands, and as he did, his uniform sleeve slid up just enough to reveal the edge of something on his forearm. The robber with the shotgun caught a glimpse of it and squinted, trying to make out what he was seeing. It was an eagle perched on top of a globe with an anchor behind it. But it wasn't just any tattoo. It was surrounded by smaller ink that told a story. 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, Fallujah, 2004 to 2005, Kandahar 2008 to 2010. And below that, words that made the robber's blood run cold. Force Reconnaissance. The robber's confident expression faltered. He'd done his homework on this bank. He knew about the cameras, the safe, the daily cash flow. But nobody had told him about the quiet man at the security desk. Nobody had told him about what Force Recon meant. Nobody had told him that he was looking at a man who had spent 2 tours hunting the kind of people who thought they could take what wasn't theirs through violence and fear. "You need to leave," Marcus said quietly, still sitting in his chair. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "Right now, while you still can." The robber with the shotgun laughed nervously. "Old man, you're in no position to be giving orders. Get on the ground before I—" "Before you what?" Marcus interrupted, and something in his tone made the entire room go silent. "Before you point that weapon at innocent people? Before you threaten bank tellers who are just trying to do their jobs? Before you make the last mistake of your very short criminal career?" The third robber, the young one by the door, was staring at Marcus's tattoo with growing alarm. He'd grown up in a military family. He knew what he was looking at. "Guys," he whispered urgently, "we need to go. We need to go right now." But the first robber was too deep into his plan, too committed to his show of force. "Shut up and watch the door," he snapped at his partner, then turned back to Marcus. "I don't care what kind of tattoo you got at some strip mall, old-timer. This is happening whether you—" Marcus stood up. It wasn't a fast movement. It wasn't dramatic. But something about the way he rose from that chair, controlled, deliberate, with the kind of balance that spoke of countless hours of training, made everyone in the room understand that the situation had just fundamentally changed. "Son," Marcus said, and his voice carried the weight of someone who had given orders in places where hesitation meant death. "You have about 10 seconds to put those weapons down and walk out that door. After that, this becomes a different kind of situation. The kind where people get hurt. And I promise you, it won't be me." The robber with the pistol was sweating now. "He's bluffing. He's just some rent-a-cop. Take him down." But the man with the shotgun was studying Marcus more carefully now, looking at the way he stood, the way his hands hung loose at his sides, ready but not threatening, the complete absence of fear in his eyes, and that tattoo, Force Reconnaissance, the Marine Corps' elite, the guys who went places that didn't exist on maps and did things that never made it into reports. Force Recon, the robber whispered, almost to himself. Marcus nodded once. Semper Fi, son. But that courtesy ends in about 5 seconds. The young man by the door was tugging at his partner's sleeve. We're leaving! We're leaving right now. But the first robber, the one with the shotgun, had let his ego override his common sense. I don't care who you used to be, old man. This is now. He swung the shotgun toward Marcus. What happened next took less than 3 seconds, but everyone who witnessed it would remember it for the rest of their lives. Marcus moved like water, like smoke, like something that shouldn't have been possible for a 52-year-old man with a limp. His left hand swept the shotgun barrel aside, while his right hand locked onto the robber's wrist. There was a sharp crack, the sound of bone breaking, and suddenly the shotgun was in Marcus's hands, and the robber was on his knees, cradling his shattered wrist. The second robber tried to bring his pistol around, but Marcus was already moving. The shotgun stock connected with his solar plexus, doubling him over, and before he could recover, Marcus had disarmed him and cable-tied his hands behind his back with zip ties that had appeared from somewhere on his uniform. The third robber, the smart one, had his hands up and was backing toward the door. I'm out! I'm out! I surrender! Marcus looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Smart choice. Hands behind your head. Knees on the ground. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 30 seconds. 3 armed men had walked into the First National Bank planning to rob it, and now 2 were zip-tied on the floor, while the third was kneeling with his hands behind his head, waiting for the police, who were already on their way, thanks to the silent alarm Marcus had triggered with his foot while he was disarming the second robber. As the sirens grew louder outside, Sarah the head teller stared at Marcus with wide eyes. Who are you? Marcus was checking the robbers' weapons, making sure they were safe, his movements efficient and professional. Just a security guard, ma'am. Just doing my job. But Mrs. Patterson, who had been coming to this bank for 20 years, shook her head as she got up from the floor. No, sir. No, you're not. She walked over to Marcus and, without asking permission, gently lifted his sleeve to reveal the full tattoo, the eagle, globe, and anchor, the unit designation, the dates, and at the bottom, in small, precise lettering, Purple Heart, Bronze Star, Silver Star. The lobby was completely silent. You're a hero, she said quietly. Marcus pulled his sleeve back down and shook his head. No, ma'am. Heroes don't make it home. I was just lucky enough to serve with some. When the police arrived, they found 3 suspects in custody and a security guard who handed over their weapons with a calm efficiency that made the responding officers exchange glances. The robbers were processed, charged, and eventually sentenced to lengthy prison terms. The one with the broken wrist would later tell investigators that he'd never been more terrified in his life than when he saw that tattoo and realized what it meant. The story made the local news, of course. Bank security guard stops armed robbery. But Marcus declined all interviews. He went back to work the next day, same time, same uniform, same quiet presence at the security desk. The only thing that changed was the way people looked at him. The bank employees started saying, "Good morning," with a different tone. Customers nodded respectfully when they passed his desk. Children pointed at him and whispered to their parents about the man who had stopped the bad guys. But Marcus remained the same, quiet, professional, present, because that's what Marines do. They serve, they protect, they watch over those who can't watch over themselves. And they do it without expecting thanks, without needing recognition, without asking for anything in return except the knowledge that they've done their duty. And sometimes, just sometimes, when someone threatens the innocent people they've sworn to protect, they remind the world why the eagle, globe, and anchor aren't just a symbol, they're a promise that evil might show up, but it won't go unopposed, a promise that there are still people willing to stand between the wolves and the sheep. A promise that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear navy blue uniforms and sit quietly at security desks, waiting for the moment when silence becomes action. Because that's what Marines do. That's what they've always done. And that's what they'll always do. Semper Fi.